All right, let's bring in the retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward. He is former Deputy Commander of U.S. Central Command, and he led operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, served as a Navy SEAL. He also grew up in Iran and is a member of the Iran Policy Project at the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America. Admiral, always good to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to start with this list of ideas, reported key demands in this Iran, I should say, U.S.-Israel negotiation, as I'd love to get your thoughts on this. The U.S. and Israel says no missile program for 5 years, zero uranium enrichment, decommission the 3 major nuclear facilities, strict observation around any machinery at these facilities, arms control, no financing for proxies. So that obviously has all been on the list for some time. Iran wants a ceasefire and they want money, compensation. Your thoughts on the outline of this potential plan, Admiral?
Well, I think those goals by the president have been very clear since he first backed out the JINSA. It was more about the nuclear program than it was about anything else. But he wanted to make sure we also address the missiles. So all those points capture that. The two that I don't see on there that I'm curious, what about the existing material? Will that be handed over? Will the IAEA be able to do inspections? And then ultimately, where you're seeing some divergence between Israel and U.S. strategy, what about the regime? What is the governance that's going to remain in place after these negotiations? So I'm curious to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, because we did hear, you know, the few things that come out of this back and forth. What about this 900 pounds of enriched uranium, highly enriched uranium at 60%, which is believed to be under the rubble somewhere? And there was a rejection, at least the reporting was there was a rejection of moving that material out of the country and putting it in a safe place. As you rightly point out, that doesn't seem to be part of this agreement. But in terms of the military objectives and where we are in the stage of all of this, what's your reaction to this 5-day pause?
Well, I think he's giving them room to consider. And just as you saw, no one wants to be a leader in Iran right now because it's kind of a death sentence. I'm the guy in charge. Okay, tomorrow you're going to be gone. So they have that dilemma on their hand. But I think the president's giving them room to work and come up with a solution and how they make that while staying in power. And that may get us the short-term objectives, but it presents a long-term problem. So it's a dilemma on both sides of the table. And I'm just curious to see how that's going to, you have a regime that's going to agree to this. Are those the guys who are going to stay in place? Or are the Israelis focused on ensuring that change of the regime and people who will be good governance for long-term peace and stability in the region?
Yeah, and it doesn't mention making, you know, the strait cannot be under the guidance and control of Iran. It has to be a free, open passage for the countries that use it. Just very quickly here, this is the Iranian missile range, because you brought up the missile range. We saw what happened with the missile that was fired to Diego Garcia over the weekend, and this puts their missile capability in range of all of the major cities of Europe. What was your reaction to that before I let you go, Admiral? What do you want us to know?
I think everyone suspected it, but this validated it. So that raises the bar for Europe and why this was so important to do it now. If this had been unchecked for another 3-5 years, the plethora of missiles that would have been in the Iranian inventory for Europe presents a whole different front they have to contend with, especially with the regime that's made it, we're going to get rid of Israel, we're going to get rid of the West. That's their objective. So it's driving why this coalition will ultimately come to the table, because this long-term risk of both shutting down the straits and the missiles are at the front of their doorsteps now.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you've got 22 countries that are trying to participate in some way, I guess. And the UK finally has ships in the region. You know, they may have fired that missile at Diego Garcia because they want that kind of opposition from Europe as well. And we'll see how this chess match continues. Admiral Harward, always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us today.